When did all these private public come about, and why did it come about?
It happened roughly 30 years ago in a different country in Australia. And it happened under Prime Minister Kennett in Australia because they were going through a period in which the government had fiscal deficit issues. They couldn't afford to operate the airports. They couldn't afford to operate the roads. They couldn't afford to operate the local water and wastewater utilities, despite the fact these were public assets that were critical or crucial to serving society publicly. So what they did is embarked upon an ambitious vision to structure public-private partnerships in which private developers, private investors may either own or operate or lease some of these assets. So Prime Minister Kennett sold off the freeways, sold off the airports, sold off some of the critical utility or infrastructure assets, in which Macquarie started buying some of these assets, privatizing them, and then would charge consumers a user fee for using the toll road. Now, these public-private partnerships, some of them were actually taken public in a listed investment company, or LIC, similar to a stock in the US. But these Australian LICs are functioning today, in which you can see companies like Transurban, one of the largest publicly traded toll road operators in the world, responsible for operating toll roads in Australia. Sydney Airports, another publicly traded stock or listed investment company, and that's responsible for operating a series of airports within Australia. Moving through history from Australia under Prime Minister Kennett to Margaret Thatcher in the UK, England went through their period of challenging sovereignty, fiscal deficit issues. Margaret Thatcher said, let's take a page out of the Aussie playbook and privatize Thames Water, privatize Eurotunnel, privatize and sell off some of these critical infrastructure assets to raise capital and try and stem the run on the treasury, as well as permit these infrastructure assets to be financed and operate in an efficient manner. So between Australia and England, you saw a preponderance of public-private partnerships, publicly traded global listed infrastructure securities. And that was really the beginning of modern infrastructure finance, of which today we have over 800 publicly traded infrastructure securities and almost $1 trillion of private infrastructure securities, open-ended funds, closed-end funds, even direct project investment capabilities that's available for investors worldwide.
I don't think I can even count to 1 billion, let alone 1 trillion. So that's a lot of money. But from a global standpoint, that's like nothing. Is this sort of the beginning of a 100-year plus of continuation, as you see it, of more privatization? There are all kinds of reasons why the government cannot afford it. Is that what you see?
You've laid out with that question the conundrum we're dealing with not only in Australia and Europe, but globally. How do you adequately address the financing of critical infrastructure without raising taxes significantly? They'll need to raise taxes, but not significantly to the point that it's untenable for the consumer. How do you create a pool of capital, either equity or debt, private funds as well as public, and be able to offer these securities to investors in a manner that's packaged, attractive, and provides adequate risk and returns so that investors will be enticed to invest in these vehicles? And I think what you're finding is the infrastructure gap locally in the US is about $3 trillion. The amount we need to invest to address existing water, sewer, transport, utilities, and energy is in that $2 trillion. Globally, it's closer to $15 trillion in terms of the gap. The amount that's being invested today and the amount that's required for additional investment just to make the roads safe to travel, just to make the water safe to drink globally, just to make sure the airports are safe so that we may travel without incident.